Hello, thank you so much for clicking on this video today to learn about another accessibility tip and how to create accessible documents. Today, I'm going to be showing how to make accessible tables and also going over the importance of accessible tables in documents. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight into my demonstration on how to make accessible tables. So I have an agenda as my example today in Microsoft Word to showcase how to make tables accessible. This agenda has a table that begins on page 2 and extends all the way to page 17. And the first two things that you want to make sure, and actually the main elements of making tables accessible are the following. You need to make sure that tables have what are called header rows, and header rows needs to be applied to your table. This just establishes document structure as well as table structure, and it also applies to correct reading order of your information. Next, a table also needs alt text, just like an image. Because if someone who is reading this document and is using a screen reading technology or an assistive technology device in order to read aloud this document to them, and they don't know what this piece of information is, that is going to confuse the individual on the other end. So I'm going to just scroll down to page 2 to show the table that's on here. And in order to create our header rows, there are two ways of going about this. So when we have our table, and if we click on the table, it will bring up a box off to the left-hand side. It's just a small little square box with like a cross T symbol in the box. And what we want to do is we want to right-click on that little box. And this brings up a window of several options. We just want to go down to table properties, and we're going to click on table properties. Since we are already on the row tab, there's a section on here that reads options. And what we need to make sure that is checked is repeat as header row at the top of each page. So I'm just going to click this box to ensure that each header row is selected. And what this is going to do is essentially it's going to read the headers of the table, which are essentially categories of each column, that it's going to read aloud that header before it reads the actual data cell and the information in that cell. And why this is important is because, again, this creates a logical reading order from left to right in the table. So whoever is using a screen reader to read aloud this document to them, or also if they're using some type of assistive technology device that is reading this to them, then they're not confused in how this table is reading. So I'm just going to click on OK. So now we've applied our header row using the table properties. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to undo this either by using my keyboard shortcut of Control Z or going up to the top of this document and pressing on the undo arrow, which is right next to the save button, excuse me. So I'm just going back to my table. What we want to do is we just want to click on our table. And there's going to be two tabs at the top of our Microsoft Word document that apply to table properties and options. One is going to read design and the other is reading layout. And what I'm going to click on is the design tab. So in this tab, it has many options that apply to tables, but what we're going to look for and also pay attention to when we want to apply header row is we're going to go to the left-hand side. There's 6 table style options, and what we're going to click on is header row. So we can make sure that that is checked in the box. And again, that's going to establish our header rows right there. So the next thing that we want to make sure our table has is alt text. And just like images, tables also need to have alt text in order to read aloud to the individual who is either using a screen reader to help them read the document or access the information, to know what exactly this is, that it's a table, and how it functions. So in order to do this, just like we had done with the first option of making header rows, we are going to go on our table. We're going to click on our table, go up to the little box in the left-hand corner, right click on that box, go down to table properties and click on table properties. And then instead of going to the table, or excuse me, the row tab, we're going to click on the alt text tab. And so I've already applied the alt text for this table. I've put the title of this table, and being that it's the CWDS October 2022 program meeting agenda. And then in description, I've included what this table is and the function of the table. Rating agenda lists topic items, names of leads who will be leading the discussions, who to report to, who will discuss, and who decides. And all you have to do after you've applied your alt text to your table is you just click on OK. And then your table should have the alt text applied to it. So this is the same document, the agenda that we used in Microsoft Word to show how to make an accessible table. However, now this is in Google Docs. And in Google Docs, you can create accessible tables. However, the only thing is that they're only going to be semi-accessible. And I'm going to scroll down to the second page to show the table. So I'm scrolling down to my second page where I find my table. And first, what I'm going to showcase is how to create the header row. So there's a few ways of going about this. I just want to make sure that I'm clicked into my table and on this first row right here, which will be my header row. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go up to the Format tab on my taskbar. That's right underneath the title of this document. I'm going to click on Format. I'm going to go down to Table and hover over Table. And then it's going to bring up a list of options that you could scroll up and down. And there's going to be an option that has a little icon of a thumbtack or like a push pin. And it reads Pin Header up to this row. And I'm going to click on that. And then this is going to establish my header row. This is the first way that you could go about this. I'm going to undo this using my keyboard shortcut. The next option or way of going about this is going back up to that Format tab, clicking on Format, going down to Table and hovering over Table. And then in the list of options, I'm going to scroll down to Table Properties, and I'm going to click on Table Properties. And off to the right-hand side, it's going to bring up properties with a list of 4 options. Right now, I have row selected, and this is going to be the option that we're going to want to click on. So, and within this row option, there are 3 options also to choose from. The one that we're going to select is Pin Header Rows. And then again, this will establish our header rows. So I'm going to close that by clicking on the X, and then I'm going to undo this again using my keyboard shortcut. Last way of going about this is right-clicking after we've got our mouse cursor in this table in our header row. It's going to bring up a similar looking list of options as we did when we clicked on Format. And in this, actually, there are a few ways. So there's the Pin Header Row option right here that you could click on, but then there's also Table Properties right here as well. So you could click on this and it will choose your header row, or I'm going to right click again and I'm going to click on Table Properties. It's going to bring up the table properties with those options again. Under row, we want to make sure that Pin Header Rows is selected, which is already selected since I already applied it. And then your table should have the header rows available. The only thing, and this is why I say that you can only make tables semi-accessible is because there is unfortunately no option to apply alt text to a table in Google Docs. So unfortunately, that is where the table is not going to be fully accessible if you create an accessible table through Google Docs. You could apply the header rows, but no alt text. So in this case, I would highly suggest and advise to use Microsoft Word when creating tables and making them accessible. However, down the line, there is a way to make sure that your tables are reading properly and correctly and also have alt text through Adobe Acrobat Pro, making an accessible version of the document as a PDF. However, that is for another video to showcase how to do that. But in this case, yes, use Microsoft Word if you want to apply the alt text to the table, which essentially is going to make it fully accessible. To recap for tables, again, what you need to have established for your tables are header rows. This contributes to the logical reading order of your table, from reading left to right in your table, but also it's going to read aloud the name of the column, category, for instance, or in this case, header row, before it reads each of the rows and the contents in those rows. And then the second thing that you want to make sure, again, is that alt text is applied to your table. Again, just indicating what this table is, the functioning of the table, so then it's read aloud to the individual who is using a screen reader to read this document or read the electronic content that you created with a table in it. Again, lastly, creating tables and applying header rows, applying alt text, and just ensuring that the table is accurately drawn up just contributes to the overall ease of navigation, in a document for individuals who are reading a document as well. Thank you so much again for clicking on this video today to learn more about accessibility and another accessibility tip in creating accessible tables. If you are facing or experiencing any confusion while doing these tips or making your documents accessible, please feel free to reach out to me. My name is Courtney. I am the CWDS Accessibility and Compliance Remediation Coordinator, and you can email me at cketcham@sdsu.edu. Thank you again for all your continued interest in learning more about accessibility work. This is, again, very, very important for all of us, and it is a best practice to incorporate into your work and your personal lives when you're creating content and engaging with any individuals, because we may all encounter situations where we're either in conversation or in particular to the academy. If you are training or facilitating a training event, you may have participants in your training events that do require accessible documents and accessible electronic content in order for them to participate and engage in your conversation, discussion, and or training. We appreciate all the work that you do, whether you are an internal Academy staff member or even external service provider who trains with us and for us. We also appreciate all the work that you may do when you are serving your communities, as well as the families that you may work with and serve. Thank you so much and have a great day.